Now that progressives have refused to withhold their vote on must-pass legislation until they get a $15 an hour minimum wage provision included in these must-pass bills, we have Republican Mitt Romney and semi-Republican, although Democrat, Senator Kyrsten Sinema proposing their own version of what the federal minimum wage hike should be. And we're learning this through reporting over at the Huffington Post, where they say that the minimum wage hike they're looking for is about $11 an hour. We're negotiating a minimum wage proposal, which we would ultimately take to our group of 20 and see how they would react to it and go from there, Romney said, referring to a bipartisan group of 20 senators who are hoping to find ways to make the Senate function better, which is hilarious because this bipartisan group has done no such thing so far. Now, corporate Democrats also are pretty awful when it comes to this issue because there are specific Democrats who think $15 an hour is just too much. Senator Joe Manchin said that plainly. Also, a $15 an hour wage doesn't even have full support among Senate Democrats, including Sinema and Manchin. Manchin has repeatedly said he would vote or he would favor something closer to $11 per hour phased in over 2 years. And I want to remind you all, the $15 an hour minimum wage hike would not be phased in immediately. It was supposed to be phased in within 4 years, which is an important caveat that I think a lot of people miss. I mean, to make it seem as though it was such a disruptive wage hike is absolutely ridiculous. And then finally, I'll leave you with this, since I've been pretty disappointed in Jeanne Shaheen lately. Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire has expressed concerns about how a $15 an hour minimum wage would affect the restaurant industry. But you should know that the tipped minimum wage is $2.13 an hour. So, we can't mess with that. We can't increase it because the restaurant industry would really suffer as a result. That's the ridiculous argument coming from a corporate Democrat like Jeanne Shaheen. Cenk, take it away.
Yeah, and of course, if the restaurant industry or any industry is upset, well then corporate Democrats like Jeanne Shaheen are upset because that's their donors. And so, well, how is she supposed to get elected unless she does exactly what her corporate overlords tell her to do? Okay, so look, there's frustrations all around here. Number one, of course, the Republicans are against any increase in the minimum wage. So if you want to give Romney credit for not being a barbarian and willing to go up to, it appears $11. Manchin said that Romney and Sinema are talking about $11. Okay, you could say he's the one Republican who has emerged from a cave. Is $11 good enough? Absolutely not. So that goes to next to the corporate Democrats. They're all funded by corporations. No one in Washington media points it out because either A, they suck at their job and are completely ignorant of what actually drives politicians, or B, they're in on it. But I really don't think they're in on it. I just don't think they're very, very, very bad at their job, and their editors are. But the higher you go up the ladder, the more they're in on it. Hey, you can't disturb our advertisers, and we need access to these corrupt politicians, et cetera. So the media's got a giant culpability here. Gee, I wonder why Manchin, for example, is opposed to a $15 minimum wage, even though the people of West Virginia are dying for a $15 minimum wage. And every poll indicates that a massive amount of Democratic voters want it, a massive amount of West Virginia voters want it. But by the way, also a very clear majority of Republican voters want it. So if 2/3 of the country wants it, why do you call the people who are against it moderates, whether they're Romney, Sinema, or Manchin, or Jeanne Shaheen? They're not moderates by definition. By definition, they're not moderates because 2/3 of the country says do it. At least, actually, it's quite in this case, it's usually even higher than that number when they poll $15 minimum wage. So every reporter in the country who keeps calling them moderates and centrists should be fired because they are not doing fact-based reporting. They're doing access journalism. Oh, I would like to kiss up to politicians, so I'll make them look positive when in reality, they're way outside the mainstream of actual Americans who unsurprisingly, of course, want one, higher wages or lower wages. That's why I'm saying it's like, I feel bad picking on the reporters because the editors are bossing them around. That's why I think every editor and every newspaper and every major cable news outlet should really be fired. I think the moderate position is that Americans want lower wages, even though every poll indicates otherwise. Well, then you're not in news, you're in alternative facts and propaganda. But now let me go to the main culprits here. wait a minute, main culprits, we already got through the Republicans and the corporate Democrats. In this case, I'm heartbroken to tell you, it's progressive legislators who are choosing to do nothing. So they chose not to do it, put it in the COVID relief bill, and then so-called progressive leadership promised us, maybe next time. Oh, next time, yeah, I talked to Biden. I'm so special. Jayapal says, I'm keeping it real. I'm gonna give you quotes from her in a second. I'm so special, I get to talk to Biden all the time, okay? And I told Biden, it's totally fine to kill the $15 minimum bill. In fact, I'll help you kill the $15 minimum wage, but I'll do it next time. So they just released the 5 progressive priorities for the infrastructure bill. That's next time. Minimum wage is not on it. She never meant it. She's never gonna go back to it. Then meanwhile, Romney and Sinema outflank her. Outflank all of the progressives in Congress by actually going in and working on a bill. Is Jayapal working on a bill? No. Is any progressive in the House working on a bill? No. Is the Congressional Progressive Caucus working on a bill? No. But Romney and Sinema are. Romney and Sinema. Look, guys, it's just, I don't relish this. I'm not one of these guys who wants to beat up these folks. Are you kidding me? I literally started the Justice Democrats. I named the Justice Democrats. I'm heartbroken to see them sitting on their hands doing absolutely nothing. They're never gonna get to it and they're never gonna fight back. And so the reason why this news story is so important is because the ship's about to sail. They're gonna do $11. And then Romney and Sinema are gonna do a dance on the Senate floor. All of the corporate media are gonna applaud them as if they did something amazing. And they're never gonna go back to it for at least another decade. We're about to lose, and I don't even know if progressives in Congress are aware that we're about to lose. So I want you to be clear. Why would I pick on Jayapal? Look, I'll be honest with you. I convinced her to be a Justice Democrat. That's a fact, okay? And so I'm rooting. I want to root for her. I want to root for her. I want her to be a great leader. But let me give you 2 quotes from a Time magazine article where they interviewed her recently. So Time explains that instead of acting as an opposition arm, she says she wants to be a proposition one. I've never heard that before. So they explain proposing the most progressive ideas possible and framing them in ways that can persuade her colleagues and the president to support them. Except the president didn't support them and her colleagues didn't support them. That's why it didn't pass. Proposing something, I hate to break it to you, is meaningless. Passing something is all the difference in the world. Did the 33 million Americans who would be affected by increasing the minimum wage, did they get their increase or did they not? They didn't. I don't care what you propose. I care what you fight for and what you win for. Hey, by the way, if you can win without fighting, great. Who wants to start a fight for no reason? I don't. It doesn't make me feel good. It's uncomfortable. I know it's uncomfortable, right? But we didn't send you to be comfortable. I don't care about your comfort. I care about the comfort of those 33 million Americans who desperately need an increase in their wages. So this is the most important part. Time explains when a $15 minimum wage increase fell out of the package because of the Senate rules, some Democrats considered withholding their votes entirely. That's true. There actually are really good Just Democrats internally. They fought. They fought. Time magazine explains Jayapal helped persuade those members to support the deal, and it passed almost entirely along party lines. In other words, she talked them out of fighting. She talked them out of making a demand. Look, we've done the Frederick Douglass quote 1,000 times, and if you're a progressive and you don't know it, especially if you're a legislator, you should study up on it. Power never, not sometimes, never concedes without a demand. Jayapal is bragging in the mainstream media about how she never makes demands. She just makes propositions. Well, I proposed something, isn't that good enough? Oh, it didn't pass, it's never gonna pass. Oh, we're gonna pass the corporate version that a Republican and Kyrsten Sinema who rubbed our faces in it about how she bragged about how she killed the minimum wage. And she did a little dance as she killed the minimum wage. And we're gonna go with their version because you chose not to do anything and not to have a strategy. So look, again, I feel terrible about telling you the truth about Congresswoman Jayapal. I wish she was a great leader. And by the way, just so you know how Washington works, as soon as people become Congress people, they become elitist within a matter of minutes, okay? So now I'm a ruffian, and so when I criticize them, as I criticized other Democrats, when they were running, they loved that, right? Now that they're among the elites, they're gonna hate me forever, okay? So that's fine. But I'm asking them to fight and to be uncomfortable about challenging their colleagues. So I have to be willing to fight and be uncomfortable in challenging what used to be my colleagues.
So I agree with everything you're saying. The only difference is what is the accurate or the most effective response to what we've already experienced with progressives in Congress, right? I totally agree with you on Jayapal. I agree with you on the mistakes that progressive legislators are making right now as we speak. But you also have to understand all of the different influencing factors. Obviously, once you're in it, there's a tremendous amount of pressure to go along to get along. And we're seeing a lot of that among progressives. I'm not excusing them for it, but what is the enforcement mechanism to make sure that they stay honest, to make sure that they actually do what they campaign to do, right? There really isn't one, Cenk. Like, that's the problem. So doing this, just calling them out, that's fine. And to be honest with you, it doesn't make me uncomfortable. I don't care. I have no loyalty to Jayapal. I have no loyalty to Justice Democrats. I have no loyalty to anyone other than our viewers and what my personal values are. So I want a $15 an hour minimum wage, but more importantly, I want a minimum wage that keeps up with inflation, because the way we've done things in this country historically when it comes to the federal minimum wage has been ineffective and has not kept up with inflation. I'm gonna go to a video explaining this in just a second. But the point that I'm trying to make is it's not good enough to just get people you like elected. There needs to be an enforcement mechanism where the people are in charge of carrying out that enforcement, and that doesn't exist right now. That's the problem. So if you have progressives entering Congress and they have all the incentives to abandon us, and there's really no enforcement mechanism on the other side, what do you think is gonna happen? What's the answer?
So Anna, the answer is actually simple. You don't want to know what the enforcement mechanism is?
I know.
You're looking at it.
I know what it is.
No,
It's not good enough.
No, but
it's
Anna, look.
Enough.
No, this is really important for the audience to understand. Part of the reason why they have the pressure that they do not to fight, and Anna's right about that. They have an incredible amount of pressure. Don't think that it's easy, and you don't understand their context. In their context, every single, and it's hard for you to understand it from your perspective. Every single person they talk to inside Washington says, don't fight, you'll be stupid, you'll be mean, you'll be rude, don't fight. And when you don't fight, Time Magazine and all the other papers come around, Bloomberg, we covered it the other day, and The Hill, they all come in and go, oh, you're so brave and you're so smart and you're so strategic for not fighting. You gave up on all your priorities, you're brilliant, but if you fight, we will destroy you. So now look at that, wait. What's the enforcement mechanism for the corporate wing of the Democratic Party? The mainstream media. So if you actually do the right thing, the mainstream media will bury you. If you do the wrong thing, they'll pat you on the back, the head, all day long. So what's the enforcement mechanism for progressives? You're looking at it. That's progressive media, us, The Intercept, etc. Is that good enough? Anna's right. Apparently it's not good enough. They're not even hearing us. They're like, oh, well, I don't know. You guys aren't my buddies anymore. Washington Post and New York Times and CNN's my buddy. The View's my buddies. Mama Bear's my buddy. You're not my buddies. Okay, that's fine. But this is the only thing we've got. That's why when I enlist the viewers, you guys are so important because you actually did move Bernie Sanders on this issue. He wasn't even gonna propose us an amendment for the $15 bill. We never would have found out which Democrats in the Senate are against it if it wasn't for you guys. So you're the enforcement mechanism. I wish we were stronger so that we could, have a bigger impact. But the honest answer is that there's a media war. And if we can't get through to them and explain to them they're killing hope out here, then they're never gonna move. They're just gonna get the pats on the back from mainstream media, and they're gonna let Romney and Sinema win. And then the mainstream media will write an article just like the one I quoted to you just now afterwards, saying, oh, Jayapal did a brilliant job of not getting $15 minimum wage again. She says she might come back to it 2 decades later. She's so strategic and practical.
Yeah, look, I'm not arguing that media isn't an important component of it. Like media is important, but even that is not enough, right? Even if we were the biggest show in the country and everyone's watching us and everyone believes in what we're saying, it's still not enough. You need people to be organized and you need people to be able to bring the US Chamber of Commerce to its knees. And you can't do that unless you have organized labor. This country is run by the US Chamber of Commerce. Period. That's the problem.
Organized labor in this country is pathetic. They usually support the corporate Democrats.
But there's a reason why. The reason why is because there have been laws passed throughout decades to weaken the ability for workers to form unions. Union power is what led, FDR to pass the New Deal. The only time we had effective economic policy in this country was when labor power was stronger. But look, I know, I get it. We're not anywhere near that right now, which is why it's so important to pass the PRO Act, which is a giant mountain to climb. I'm not denying that. But let's talk about a comparison between the United States and other countries that have a federal minimum wage, okay? Keep in mind that Nordic countries, they don't have federal minimum wages. They have strong labor unions which negotiate wages on behalf of the workers, which is why they get paid way better than we do here in the United States. But since we're comparing apples to apples here, let's look at other countries that have a federal minimum wage. Vox did a decent job with this video. I want to share it with you. Let's take a quick look.
Every time the minimum wage has been raised, inflation has dragged it right back down. Really, America's minimum wage hasn't gone up. It's essentially stayed the same since the 80s. What you're seeing here, this constant up and down, this is weird. It's not how the rest of the world does it, and it leads to a bunch of problems for American workers and businesses. Imagine how much smoother that could all go if the minimum wage just kind of went up over time. Well, we don't have to imagine it. In France, they automatically raise their minimum wage every single year. They tie it to inflation and the average salary of a French worker. In Australia, a commission reviews the minimum wage every year, considering economic factors like inflation. The UK also has a commission made up of union, business, and economic experts. The Czech Republic's commission consults with employer and union representatives. Their line is lower overall than America's, but it still trends upwards. Same with Costa Rica, and their committee reviews the minimum wage twice a year. In most countries, the minimum wage is in the hands of economic officials. In the US, it's in the hands of politicians. And that goes about as well as you'd expect.
Yeah, it's a garbage method of increasing the federal minimum wage. This is part of the reason why you have ballot initiatives in red states like Florida that succeed in passing a minimum wage in that state to the tune of 61%, by the way. 61% of voters in Florida voted in favor of that ballot initiative to increase their state's minimum wage to $15 an hour. So, I mean, it's just, yes, the people want it, Cenk. And unfortunately, right now, relying on Congress, whether you elect Justice Democrats or not, is a faulty strategy. It just is.
Anna,
it's a faulty
come
strategy.
On.
No,
Anna,
it is. Cenk,
no.
What are they doing? They have a block in the House right now. They're not using their leverage. So, okay, what are we gonna do? What's the response to that? What's the response to that?
Anna,
I wanna know.
Your plan would require decades of work while people sit there at $7.25 minimum wage, okay? And by the way, currently, do you know what the unions are doing? Do you see them raging for $15? No, they're not. They're basically absent from this fight. Do you wanna know why? Because they're selfish.
Because they're sucking up the corporate Democrats.
No, hold on, let me explain why. They say, hey, if you get the $15 minimum wage, so we'll pretend to be in favor because we're in favor of labor, right? But if you get it, well, that reduces our power. We're pretending to be the only ones who can get you higher wages. If you already have a $15 minimum wage, that might reduce, in this time, some particular union's power. So they're sitting it out. They're not using their clout at all, right? So I'm not gonna go sit there and rely on this current union leadership. Then you'll be waiting forever and ever.
The problem is this current union leadership, and unions are incredibly weak. But look, I'm conceding to you that having powerful organized labor in this country is going to take some time. But I also want you to understand that relying solely on a few progressive members of Congress to do the right thing when all the incentives are on the wrong side, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And that's what we're seeing over and over again. There has to be a better way to do this.
Nah, look, if you can't rely on Congress and using political power and leverage in a democracy, then you're giving up. And so, no, you have to fight it this way. And so, look, if we took the attitude of, well, we like the Just Democrats, and so let's just, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, kiss their ass and sit there and let them do whatever they want. Oh, they're super comfortable. They got nice seats in the palace. That's so wonderful, right, for them. And then we cheerlead for them when they do the wrong thing. Then yes, that's a very poor strategy, and the strategy that unfortunately a lot of groups are taking right now. Oh no, but then we would lose access to our legislators. So what? Because it isn't about your ego. It isn't about our ego, and it isn't about the legislators' egos. It's about how do you get it passed today? They need that $15 minimum wage today. It was literally the simplest priority we had. The president claims to be in favor of it. He's obviously lying. Democratic leadership claims to be in favor of it. They're obviously lying, but you could use their lies against them. You could use that publicly. Any one of those progressive legislators, including, by the way, Bernie Sanders, who is totally missing in action, okay? When it's an undoable thing, it's easy to be a rebel. When it's doable, but it's uncomfortable, that's when people are tested. And Bernie Sanders, is he calling out Biden? Oh no, that's his friend. No. Is he calling out Manchin? No. Is he calling out any Democrats saying, wait, you promised, Joe Biden, you promised, Kamala Harris, you promised. Bernie Sanders gives that speech, or a single Justice Democrat gives that press conference, or goes to the floor of the Senate or the House, do that, they're gonna rock this world. The media would then go, oh my God, it's a fight between Bernie and Biden. And then they would go, well, it's true, Biden did promise it. It's true, he hasn't done it. It's true, it's true, it's true. But Bernie has chosen not to do that. The Justice Democrats have chosen not to do that. So it's incumbent upon us today, not 20 years from now, when we theoretically take a very weak and selfish union leadership and magically transform them into brilliant fighters 20 years from now. It's incumbent upon us right now, us and the audience, to say, God damn it, Bernie. God damn it, Justice Democrats. AOC, legendary fighter AOC, where are you? It was nice and easy and great to challenge Democratic leadership when you were primarying them. But now that you're in power, all of a sudden you don't want us to challenge Democratic leadership? Oh, hell no. You can get mad at us all day long, but you have got to do your job. And our job is to put pressure on you no matter what it costs us personally.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.